This is Carrie with Crimson Hound. This is going to be a video on how to break up a dog fight. So before I get started on some techniques that you can use, I would like to preface this with a couple of cases. If you have two dogs that have a history of fighting, they have caused damage, or one dog has been taken to the vet due to injuries, or if you have a large dog living with a small dog, or a large dog and you're introducing a small dog or a puppy, and in either case there's a history of perhaps guarding their food or being overprotective of toys, rather than trying to learn some techniques on YouTube that may not work in a more dangerous situation, I would recommend that you contact a certified professional dog trainer in your area and get some hands-on help. So look for someone who is certified, who has some experience in working with aggressive behaviors and uses positive reinforcement methods to work with the dogs. They can then come into your home, give you some hands-on help with how you would break up a dog fight in a more severe case, and also, more importantly, help you with training and behavior modification to help make your dogs safely living in a space together, and give you some safety and management tips on how to keep everyone safe in your home. So if you just have dogs that you're worried may tussle over some food sometime, or you're at the dog park and you'd like to know what would I do in the case of a dog fight, here's some things that you can do. So the first thing, if things haven't escalated too badly, oftentimes you can just call them away, so call their name. What you don't want to do is be screaming at the dogs. You don't want to kick the dogs. You don't want to hit the dogs. You don't want to be yanking the dogs by the tail. You do not want to be reaching around the mouth to try and separate them. Dogs that are in a frenzy with screaming, kicking, hitting, those things can escalate it and make things worse. If you are trying to reach around the mouth to grab the dogs to pull them away from each other, you can easily be bit. You know, if a dog in a frenzy flings his head around as you go to grab him, he can grab your hand by accident. They're obviously not trying to bite you on purpose. It's an anxiety and high stress situation, and they happen to swing their head around and they don't know what they're doing. They can catch your arm or your hand. In addition to don't get around the mouth, do not grab in the collar area. The same thing can happen. A dog can swing its head around and grab your hand, or the other dog can be trying to reach to grab the second dog and get your hand by accident. So you want to do things that you can do from a distance if possible to start with. So the first thing would be to try calling the dogs away. That can work. The next thing would be to use some noise things to break up the fight. So if you have a can and you can throw in some rocks or some coins or even some kibble and shake it and make noise. So from a bit of a distance, try and shake that and get their attention, get them away. If you happen to have, like I do, containers of dog food and treats all over the house and that makes noise, you can shake that from a distance and see if that helps. Sometimes if your dogs are used to this sound and they hear the shaking treats in the container, that can be enough to get them to separate from one another. If that is not working, then louder sounds and then more invasive methods may be needed. So you may have a air horn app on your phone, or you can get an air horn for pretty cheaply at the store, or order one. You can use an air horn to make a loud noise, to startle them, to get them to let go, giving you the time to grab the dogs and move them away from each other. If you don't have that, a couple products on the market that are actually good things to have, especially if you walk dogs in areas where there may be loose dogs or aggressive dogs in the area. This one is Pet Corrector. This is a can of compressed air. They also make another product called Spray Shield, which is a can of compressed citronella spray. The citronella spray will actually spray a stream from about 6 to 8 feet away, so you don't need to get too close to the dogs to do this. So what you're gonna do is spray this product in the area between the dogs to try to get them to let go of one another, so you can get them separated from each other. In the case of something more aggressive, or they're not letting go, you may need to actually direct it to a dog's nose. But the citronella spray you can spray from a pretty good distance and aim it in between the dogs. The other thing you can do if that's not working, or if you don't have that handy, grab something that you can use to either cover the dogs or separate the dogs. So for instance, you could grab a blanket, a jacket, a big towel, a rug, anything that you can throw over the dogs, get them to kind of stop fighting, and then pull one out of the way and get them separated. You can also use obstacles to push in between them. So if you're outside, maybe you have a garbage can lid, you could use a chair. If you've got a baby gate, you can put that in between. You can even do something like, I've got a TV tray here handy. I can stick that between the dogs and try and force them apart. And then once they're apart, I can grab one dog and get him moved out of the room, behind a baby gate, behind a door, outside, etc., and get them separated. If those aren't working, another thing that you can do if you've got leashes handy, so plan ahead and keep leashes handy. This method can work with 2 people, or you can do it also with 1 person. So we've got a leash for each dog. 6 foot length is probably about the best to use for this method. So what you're going to do is take the leash, you're going to slip it underneath their belly, right in front of their back legs. The handle is here. We slip the clip portion through the handle, and then we pull that taut. And now we have a hold of the dog. Our hands are nowhere near the mouth. We can now move this dog out of the area. So we're pulling him away. Now, which dog should you start with if you're alone? If there are 2 people doing this, each person has a leash, each person is going to grab a dog and separate them. If you're alone, you want to start with the dog that either has the upper hand or the dog that seems to be the aggressor, because that is the dog that once you get a hold of them, the other dog is probably not going to continue to engage. If you disengage and you have a hold of the dog that is not aggressing, then the aggressor dog is loose and he may continue to follow you. So keep that in mind. If you don't know, just grab a dog. Pull them off out of the way. You can stick them behind a door, behind a baby gate if we have one here. If need be, you can wrap this around a door handle and slam the door on it. You can tie it to a door. Now you've got this dog tethered and out of the way. If you're working alone, then you come over and do the same thing with the second dog. Again, slipping it right in front of the back legs, taking the clip portion, sticking it through the loop and pulling it taut. And then you pull this dog out of the situation. Okay. If you don't have a leash handy, we can still separate them doing something similarly. You're gonna be a little bit closer to the dogs. Again, you want to start with the dog that appears to be the aggressor so that you're not being followed as you move the dogs away. What you want to do is grab the dog and you're going to wheelbarrow them away from the situation. So what you don't want to do, you don't want to grab the dog by the tail. You do not want to grab the dog by the ankles or the feet, because as you start pulling on them, if they're twisting to get away from you, they can do damage to the knees, rip ligaments, etc. And now you have an injured dog that needs to go to the vet anyway. So where you want to grab them is right where we put the leash just a minute ago. So you're going to grab in the loin area, right in front of the legs. Get a hold of that, grab and pull quickly away, right? And move them again behind a baby gate into a different room, slam the door, move them outside, etc. If you have a small dog and a large dog, what your automatic mind thinks to do is pick that little dog up and move it. In general, that's not a good idea. When you pick up that little dog, you now have a little dog right by your face biting, and you have a big dog that still wants to get at that little dog, so he may be jumping at you and get a hold of you trying to get at the little dog. So it's not a good idea to pick up the dogs. It's a better idea to separate them in this way. So in the case of the leash technique, you would put the leash on the big dog and move the big dog away. If you have, caveat here, if you have a baby gate or a doorway very close to you and you can quickly pick up the little dog, get it behind a door, and then get a hold of the big dog, that can work in a pinch, but it is safer to get a hold of the bigger dog and move the bigger dog out of the situation. okay? Another thing to think about, these techniques of separating the dogs are when dogs are biting and letting go. So we call these scissor fights. When the dogs come in, they bite, they let go. There are cases of bite and hold fights, where they call them vice grip fights, where one dog grabs a hold of the dog and gloms on and will not let go. If this is what you have, dogs are not going to be moving around. There's going to be one dog that just has a hold of the dog and won't let go. You do not want to try and pull the dogs apart, because as you pull the dog away, the dog that is biting is going to bite harder, and it's going to cause more damage as you try to pull them apart. So in the case of a bite and hold fight, you want to use the noisemaker methods, the air horn, the citronella spray. Again, you may need to spray water, citronella spray, etc., up the nose of the dog that is biting to get him to let go. Once you have them apart, then you can use these methods, an obstacle, something like that, to keep them apart, okay? If you have the time and you have a close area, you may take the leash. If this is the aggressor dog and he is biting on, we could, if we have two people, have one person get a leash around that dog that is biting the other one. Now we have a hold of him. We're not going to pull him away. We're just going to hold him here. We're going to use the citronella spray to separate the dogs, and then we're going to pull this big dog away. Okay, so all of this is in keeping with keeping your hands away from the bitey end of the dog, and keeping everyone safe and getting the dog separated as quickly as possible. Okay, so again, these are methods that would work at home. You may want to practice this. If you don't have a leash handy, think about, where can I put a leash to keep it handy? What would I do if a dog fight happens in this area? What would I do if a dog fight happens in that area? Where would I stash the dogs? Where could I tether the dogs? You may want to practice with putting the leash around and under the dog so you can do that quickly. And again, the caveat of, if you have dogs that have a history of fighting, they have caused damage, you have a small dog and a large dog, please contact a professional dog trainer to come into your home and help you. They can give you hands-on practice with how to work with dog fights. They can also then work with you in safety and management. Where would we put baby gates to keep the dogs apart and separated and safe from one another? Okay, so hopefully this helps you in a general kind of tussle with the dog fight, and stay safe.